My name is Nakeisha Lyon. I am the city planner for Boulder City. I'm also the main point of contact when it comes to anything historic preservation-wise for the city, other than our community development director, Michael Mays. And then I'm going to have Courtney introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Courtney Mooney. I'm an architectural historian for Broadbent Associates, and I'd like to also introduce our historian, Matthew Johns. Our company has a contract with the city to do on-call historic preservation services, so this is part of one of my tasks, and happy to be here, and I'll also be here afterwards if you have any questions.
Thanks, Courtney.
Sure.
So for some background, the city has really recognized the importance of historic preservation within Boulder City. As previously adopted in the city's strategic plan for 2020 to 2025, promoting historic preservation has been our priority over the last 5 years to achieve the city's vision, which is committed to preserving its status as a small town with small town charm, historical heritage, and unique identity, while proactively addressing the community's needs and enhancing residents' quality of life. In the newly adopted strategic plan for 2025 to 2030, Goal 4 sets to continue promoting historic preservation. And one of the objectives in doing so is to increase awareness of the economic benefits of historic preservation through increased communication as well as engagement with the community. The City Council and the Historic Preservation Commission also adopted a historic preservation plan back in 2021, and this is to further outline specific goals and objectives that are overseen by our Historic Preservation Commission to address preservation issues that face Boulder City. Recently, we've had property owners within the historic district really express their lack of awareness in regards to the city's historic preservation program, the design guidelines, and the requirements as it pertains to their newly purchased home or a home that they've owned for quite a while, as well as making improvements to those properties. As this information can be a key factor when purchasing a property, and realtors are on the front lines of assisting property buyers in this decision-making process, the city is really focused on providing the support and the available resources regarding our local preservation program to help realtors better market historic homes within Boulder City. The Historic Preservation Commission has also directed staff to increase our outreach to realtors in the Valley, which involves reaching out directly to realtors, as well as leasing agents on a monthly basis in regards to their property listings in the historic district. So I send those emails out monthly, just providing historic information on that specific property and encouraging you to include that in the listing. And then also offering this workshop, which is geared towards real estate professionals and title companies, which is ultimately why we've invited you all here today. And if anyone here is just general from the public, this information is also really helpful. So for workshop goals, today we're going to be covering the economic, cultural, and community benefits of historic preservation. We're going to go into Boulder City's historic district and its significance. We'll also review some key terms, policies, and requirements of the program. We'll provide an overview of the city's webpage and our interactive map, which is a really great tool for anyone to use in trying to find historic preservation about a property in Boulder City. We'll go over available grants and additional support that we offer, and then how to get involved with the city's preservation efforts. So ultimately, we hope that you walk away today with a better understanding of how historic communities are a benefit to property owners, and then what available resources the city has to help property owners in preserving the historic character within our community. So now I'm gonna pass it over to Courtney Mooney, who's gonna dive into historic preservation and its benefits.
Okay, so there have been multiple studies that have been taken over the past 50, 60 years or so around the United States that show there are several benefits to historic preservation. And I think one of the things that really, the first benefit that we talk about here represents a city's authentic cultural and architectural heritage, and Boulder City really has that in spades. The Main Street is obviously very popular, and I would argue that it's popular because of so much of the historic material that has been retained, because you just don't get that anywhere in this valley. You know, you really, it's such an incredible resource. People come up here because they love the old architecture and the shopping and the events and that kind of thing. And so that's been really successful, I think, for Boulder City. And it's also interesting to note that a lot of these historic neighborhoods, when they were built, possibly before the advent of the automobile, they're inherently walkable. So usually you would have your commercial area and your residential around it very close, and you would have sidewalks and street trees and these things. So, and Boulder City also has a lot of that. So it has really good bones. What I've experienced in my professional experience of 27 years doing this is that when a neighborhood gets designated, typically people really start getting a sense of ownership about the community, and people start taking better care of their properties, and they do some research and they try to determine the best way to restore or rehabilitate their house, and then this in turn reflects on property values. So my personal experience, I lived in a neighborhood in downtown Las Vegas, and during the recession of 2008, it's a historic neighborhood. The people that lived there had lived there for, they bought the properties new in the 40s. A lot of them were, older, or they had just come into the neighborhood, and they were like young families. But that neighborhood completely withstood the recession better than almost any other zip code in the city of Las Vegas, because these older historic neighborhoods really have this resiliency and staying power. Historic preservation, as we see on Main Street in Boulder City, supports small businesses and heritage tourism. The tourism aspect is pretty obvious. Typically with older neighborhoods or older downtowns, you have these smaller commercial spaces that they can go for a little bit less per square foot. I'm not a realtor, obviously, so I'm going to just please pardon the whatever words I say about that. But they're typically, they'll go for less money. So these smaller businesses can afford to have can have their businesses on Main Street. And they show market resiliency, and they also aid in job creation. So with rehabilitation of these historic buildings, you're typically hiring skilled workers who can work with these older materials like wood and carved wood, or some of these mid-century materials like Formica or things like that. So you're getting these really kind of niche labor folks that, they're local, and then the money goes back right into the economy. So there's a lot of benefits, and I just kind of I went quickly through them. I encourage you to do, your own research on that, but it has been shown to have a real economic benefit for towns. And now I would like to introduce the Boulder City Historic Preservation Commissioner, Chuck Baker. He is going to elaborate on some of these points and how historic preservation impacts Boulder City. He's a former California realtor, a local real estate investor, and he is a founding member of the Las Vegas Historic Preservation Commission as well.
Thank you. Don't get up, anyone. Thank you. So I just have a few brief remarks. Some of the things Courtney and Nakeisha have covered here, but I want to talk about a couple local things, local neighborhoods, and also I downloaded some things of a larger nature. I'm going to suggest maybe all of you go online and download some of this other information. As a former property owner in Los Angeles, as well as a former realtor back there, I had a rental property on the edge of, but not exactly in, a historic neighborhood. But the fact that it was, the proximity was so close that when I eventually sold the property, I was able to get a little extra money because I was able to talk up the fact that, look, we're right next door to this historic neighborhood, and people understood that, they appreciated that. So the fact is that not only properties in a historic neighborhood, but even those that are very close by, as realtors, you can use that as a selling point. By the way, how many of you here are realtors today? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Nice for being here. So as Courtney said, historic preservation areas, surrounding neighborhoods. They create stable, walkable streets. They bring people and families together. They give people a chance to know their neighbors. These are selling points that you as realtors can use if people are asking you, is it worthwhile buying in a historic neighborhood? People who live in those neighborhoods, they're going for a long-term investment. They help maintain the property. They take care of the property. Historically, such districts can also recover much more quickly from market downturns. That's been the history, at least in the past few years. So those people who, again, may ask you as realtors, is it worth buying a home in a historic district? I certainly say it is. Those homes exhibit curb appeal. They have a higher property value, generally speaking, due to their historical significance. Once they're bought, they're repaired, they're maintained, and in fact, they can make excellent investments in almost each case. I want to mention, those of you remember from school when Benjamin Franklin said that nothing can be certain except death and taxes. He actually said that to me. I was just a little boy at the time, and Courtney remembers that. And but actually, while we can't do much about death, taxes can be abated to a certain extent because there are grants made, philanthropic organizations that will give money to certain property owners, which can then be used to abate those taxes, those property taxes. There's a lot of grant opportunities available, public, private, nonprofit organizations. Again, you have to go online. You can find all that out. I had tons and tons of material that I had found. I'm just showing you a few lines of things that I picked up. Some of the papers up in the front that you picked up cover the Residential Historic Preservation Grant Program here in Boulder City. I'm on the commission here. I wasn't even totally aware of that program until I recently went online and kind of dug into it. We have the grant program. We have the redevelopment agency in Boulder City that assists businesses and developers to build and maintain certain projects. Property owners, tenants can ask for financial assistance. So for all those things and all those reasons, I appreciate all of you being here. Those of you realtors who have an opportunity, please pass this on to your fellow realtors, your fellow brokers, your fellow clients, buyers, sellers, what have you. And I think we look forward, I know we look forward to working much more closely with the real estate organizations here in town. I think we've been a little remiss, the commission has, in not working closely with you. So we're starting by inviting you here today, but I hope we get together more often and we get together with more of you in the very near future. Thanks very much. Courtney, okay.
Okay, so I'd like to give you a little bit of history of Boulder City to kind of explain the significance of it. It was initially developed in 1931 to house the workers hired to build the dam. The lead agency for designing Boulder City was the federal government, and they hired a landscape architect and a couple of other professional designers to create the plan for Boulder City, which is referred to now as the DeBoer plan. As the gentleman that designed it, his name was DeBoer. And you can see that this is one of the really initial plans that he had prepared on the bottom. And you can see how it really hasn't changed too much from that. There was some value engineering going on. From the very first one, there was a little bit less open space in the second plan. But generally, it's pretty much the same. And I think what's really interesting about it is that that this is one of the things that when you talk to residents of Boulder City, that that they really enjoy how the city was laid out, how that everything is very walkable. You've got your street trees on most of the streets are still there. You can walk to the commercial and services, and it's just got that very kind of historic layout to it, which seems to work very well for the town. And I think that that's important to keep in mind. The other interesting thing is that, we have a huge section of town where there's these sort of modest homes. They're called, there's a name, I think when I was doing research, they were calling them dingbats, the little, the smaller ones in the letter streets. And those were not supposed to be permanent. They were supposed to be temporary, and they were, but they're still here because people raise their families in them, and they have, great stories about them. And the museum owns one and has restored one on C Street. And so a lot of times when people think of Boulder City, they think of these little wooden houses on the letter streets. And then of course you have the executive housing, which is around kind of the outskirts on the west side. But definitely very unique architecture. It speaks to the time that the homes were built. And it's just important that this architecture is maintained for the benefit of the entire district. But I do think that is a selling point for folks. They want to come in and they want to live in a historic neighborhood. Usually that's what draws them here is the walkability aspect and the unique architecture. Which was, that the federal government even mandated how you would, how the homes or the buildings on Main Street were designed with the arcades and covered walkways and everything. So it's kind of interesting. So in 2020, the Boulder City Historic District was designated on the National Register in 1983. And in 2020, the city contracted with a cultural resource management firm to update the survey and kind of see where they were at, see if they still had a good amount of contributing properties versus non-contributing properties, and what actions, if any, could they take to kind of support some of these homes that had become non-contributing to become contributing again through grant funding and other programs. And so there were 517 residential, commercial, and public buildings that were surveyed, and of these there were 223 contributing and 294 non-contributing. And just as a definition, contributing properties are built within the district's period of significance, which is determined by the National Register nomination. And this period, the period of significance for Boulder City is 1930 to 1945. And that is when the federal government first came in. They started, building the houses and the commercial buildings and public buildings, the administration building, reclamation building. All of that started happening in 1930. And then, of course, the infrastructure as well, the water towers. And at the end of the war, right, 1945 is the end of the period of significance for that. So properties that are built within the period of significance and retain their integrity, meaning they haven't had really significant alterations to them, you can still look at them and see that they look like one of these, little wooden houses on the letter streets, or the Spanish Revival homes or mission style homes that are, more of the executive, that were built for the executives. Those are contributing properties. And then, unfortunately, the survey found that there were more non-contributing properties. There had been a lot of changes since that survey in 1983. And the non-contributing properties, they were built within that period of significance, but they've had too many alterations, so you can't really see the historic architecture of those buildings anymore. And, or they were built outside of the period of significance, so any like 1946 and on. So once the survey was done, Boulder City started thinking about ways to help property owners bring their properties back up to contributing, and if they did that, then they could apply for grant funding. So an aspect of that was to kind of redo the design guidelines based on just some new information and new technology. So the guidelines apply to all properties within the district, and they include and they also include those that are constructed after 1945 and vacant properties, because there are guidelines for infill construction. They're divided into two different approaches. There's a more prescriptive prescriptive approach for contributing properties, and that really focuses on the character defining features of the specific architectural styles as opposed to like larger areas of town. So in this example, this is just one example of one of the design guidelines for the National Folk Style homes, which are all on the letter streets. And we noted the character defining features, so when an application comes in for a certificate of appropriateness, which Nakeisha will explain in the following slides, we can take a look at this and say, does it retain these character defining features, or does it kind of bring back or uncover some of the character defining features that had been lost over the years? For non-contributing and infill, there's a little bit more flexible contextual approach where, and it's a little bit fuzzy by design because we want to have some flexibility with these, where the non-contributing homes, you're looking at the home within the context of the street and the neighborhood and adjacent properties. So, you might not want to put a second story on a building where, a home where everything on the street is single story. So you just kind of got to, read the room a little and take a look around and see what's, what is adjacent to you. If you're flanked by two contributing properties, you think you might want to try to retain some of the historic architecture of your home. And also, you don't want to take away from the ability of the street or the district to convey its significance as a 1930s residential area. So it's just a little bit more of a contextual approach.
Now I'll get into certified local governments, or CLGs. So these are municipalities that have demonstrated through a certification process a commitment to local historic preservation efforts, which help to preserve, protect, and increase awareness of America's unique cultural heritage found in the built environment. This program is in partnership between the National Park Service, the State Historic Preservation Office, and local governments like Boulder City to support and strengthen local historic preservation programs in compliance with the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966. So minimum requirements to become a certified local government. This includes creating an ordinance in the planning and zoning code that supports historic preservation. And so that is Chapter 27 of Title 11. Establishing a qualified historic preservation commission to oversee the program, and that's our historic preservation commission that we have. And then complying with Nevada's open meeting law requirements, which includes public participation within the preservation program. And so every fourth Wednesday of the month, we do have our Historic Preservation Commission meetings. So Boulder City became a certified local government in 2019. Other CLGs in Nevada, that includes Carson City, Las Vegas, Reno, and Story County. Becoming a certified local government, this essentially allows the city to have access to a specific pool of grant funding, as well as training opportunities and technical assistance from the State Historic Preservation Office. So just to kind of go over how that's helped the city, we were able to apply and receive funds to do improvements to our water filtration plant, as well as Courtney mentioned, updating the historic inventory surveys, which hadn't been done since 1983, and then providing training for our Historic Preservation Commission members. So let's get into why you all are here, the meat and potatoes of our program, which is how do property owners go about modifying a historic property? So a certificate of appropriateness, acronyms are a COA or a C of A. This is the document that is issued by the city signifying approval of an alteration of any designated historic property. This is a separate review process that ensures compliance with the applicable design guidelines that Courtney mentioned. So most exterior changes to properties within the historic district which require a building permit and are visible from a public street must obtain a certificate of appropriateness. So common improvements that would require a COA, this includes new construction or additions to a home, installing fences, walls, retaining walls, siding changes to the facade, roof replacement with new materials. Things that do not require a COA, this includes internal modifications, ordinary maintenance and repairs to the property, landscaping, painting, and then mechanical equipment installation. The review process is really dependent on the historic listing status, so whether it's contributing or non-contributing. So most improvements to a contributing structure, that's going to require the Historic Preservation Commission's review and approval of the associated certificate of appropriateness. This does require a public hearing as well as notification of the neighboring property owners within 300 feet of the property in regards to the change. And once approved by the Historic Preservation Commission and then obtaining the necessary building permit, the property owner can go ahead and move forward with their project. And then most improvements to a non-contributing structure, that requires administrative review and approval of the certificate of appropriateness. So these applications are processed internally by staff, and then we report out to the Historic Preservation Commission on a monthly basis on any changes that have occurred. To apply for a certificate of appropriateness, property owners must submit an application via email, or you can stop by our office and drop it off. This is detailing the proposed changes that you're making to the historic property. It includes the project plans, photographs, and supporting documents demonstrating how the work aligns with the preservation guidelines, the applicable design guidelines for the property. This can happen before or concurrent with the submittal of a building permit. I'm going to take a moment here and navigate our historic preservation website so you can kind of see how this works and what resources we have. So this is the main community development page, and then we have a link on the side here for historic preservation. So you can go ahead and click on that. Another way that you can get to the website is if you go to How Do I? And then there is a drop-down link for Learn About and then Historic Preservation, and that will take you to the page as well. So the main landing page, this just really provides a high-level overview of the program, a lot of things that we've discussed in this presentation. And then going back to the links on the left, that goes into specific web pages that just have more detail in regards to modifying a historic property, the commission, our Historic Preservation Award, and the available grants that we have, and then other resources. So I want to go to the Modifying a Historic Property page. And this is going to have a lot of the information that I just went over on the previous slide. So I think the main step is really determining whether or not the property is located within the historic district. And if so, then you're able to figure out the historic status, how that was determined, and what the applicable design guidelines are. So step one on this page, that has a link to our interactive map that we developed last year. And this is a GIS map. It's really the one-stop shop for things that relate to the property in question. So to navigate this, on the top right-hand side of the screen, there's a search bar. And so there you would type in the address. So we'll do 1005 Arizona Street. And then you can click on it or click enter, and then the map will take you to that specific address. The best way to navigate this is then clicking on the box or the colored polygon. This will bring up the pertinent information about the property. So when it was constructed, its architectural style, and the architectural resource form and the applicable design guidelines. It says like contributing, the Y is yes, N is no. And then the two links below are the updated historic inventory forms and then the applicable design guidelines. So you would click there to find that information. We also have a user manual that we developed alongside this to help provide guidance that you can read through. You can also call staff. We are here to help you. And if you find any errors or you're having difficulties using this tool, we just developed this and we want to know. We want to make improvements. We want to refine it. We want to make it user-friendly for the public. So please reach out to us. Getting into available resources and incentives that we have. So we do have grants specifically related to historic preservation, and these were established to support local residents and business owners in making improvements to their property and revitalizing commercial buildings. So the first one is our residential historic preservation grant program. So property owners can receive up to $10,000 or 50%, whichever is less, reimbursement for eligible home improvements. With that, the home must remain a contributing structure or become a contributing structure. Getting into the Historic Preservation Redevelopment Agency grant program. So this one was established to assist businesses and developers that are interested in projects aimed at revitalizing property within our redevelopment area, and a significant portion of that area exists within the historic district. So this grant opportunity provides economic incentives for redevelopment activities within the RDA that result in the maintenance or the enhancement of the historical integrity of commercial buildings and structures, or improvements which result in a non-contributing property being reclassified as a contributing property to the historic district. So property owners can receive $99,900 or 50%, again, whichever is less, reimbursement of the total eligible cost of a project. And Rafi Fistekjian, he's here. He is our city's economic development coordinator, and he oversees the redevelopment agency program. And he would be the main point of contact to assist business owners with that grant opportunity or with any inquiries that they may have. And then community involvement and resources. So how to get involved more with us. We do have a Historic Preservation Day coming up. So on an annual basis, the city does celebrate this day and month alongside other jurisdictions nationally. And that's by hosting events that promote historic places as well as heritage tourism. And so that day is Saturday, May 10th. That's going to be our 16th Historic Preservation Day. So we'll have various activities for the whole family that day from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. And there are some flyers on that front table with more information on that day as well as on our website. Our website is also a great tool. I know there's a lot on there, and staff is working towards making further updates to just make it more user-friendly, to have the more pertinent information available and to the forefront. And so, yeah, I'm still working on that. One of those new items was the modifying a historic preservation page, property page, to really just outline what steps are required. And resources is that we are here for you. So city staff, including myself, as well as Michael, we're pretty available. If not Michael, then I am available. So you can meet with us, you can schedule a meeting, your clients can come and schedule a meeting with us, maybe before they engage in a contract and things of that nature. We're able to answer questions and just help guide through the process. As well as our consultants. So Broadbent Associates, they're also here to help. We encourage that you would just reach out to city staff first, and then we would arrange a meeting, whether it is with Courtney as well as Matthew. And Matthew is here locally in Henderson, so we have somebody on the ground you can meet, or via phone or virtually. And so that is our presentation for today. I really want to just thank you all for your time and coming out. And we are available for any questions that you may have. Thank you.